you are an unreasonable person and that you do not accept the status quo. And so as an unreasonable person, what's the call to action? What can we do in the next 9 years or sooner in terms of ensuring that everyone has access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene?
It's important that I feel like my government is in on this. Like, they believe the job isn't done yet. And I do believe that having sustainable development helps with national security and brings security to countries.
Welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarni, a water strategy consultant, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And today we are thrilled to be joined by Eleanor Allen, who is the CEO of Water for People. Eleanor, good to see you and welcome.
Thank you, Tom and Will. Great to be here.
How are you?
I'm well. Waiting for a snowstorm to come.
Right, it's a beautiful background you have there, which
Yeah,
is you're in Colorado, but that's quite clearly not Colorado at the moment.
No,
right?
Colorado's usually like this, but today it's gray. This is Malawi, so I'm doing my psychological warming by doing my virtual travel while I'm talking to you.
Fantastic. So, Eleanor, we want to talk a bit about your kind of origin story. And I was looking back at some of your videos, and you've done TED Talks and World Economic Forum talks where you said, water is your life. It's your kind of mission, right? But before we do, I think I want to talk a bit about your, at the moment, pretty grueling training regime for a cycle, right? Because a lot of hours of the day, you're putting on the saddle as well as on Zoom calls and running the business. So I think we should start with that, actually.
And Eleanor, are you on a cycle right now?
Yeah, I'm training.
Okay, good. Sorry.
No, I have actually looked at those laptop in front of your bikes, but I just haven't been able. I'm not going to go there. It's a little too much together. Training, working thing.
They look good though, don't they? I mean, you're literally burning calories whilst working. But I converted to a standing desk recently. Honestly, game changer for focus and concentration, and you can pivot the whole thing up and down. But I haven't ventured to the cycle desk yet. So race, is it you? Because I remember seeing on your social media you did the Race for Life, which was an incredible distance. This was a couple of years ago, right? So this is a
Race Across America.
Race Across America. So what's the latest race event you're training for then?
So I'm training for the Race Across the West, which is actually the first 930 miles of the Race Across America. So it's the California to Colorado section.
Okay.
And typically you do the Race Across the West first, and then you do the Race Across America. But that didn't happen for me. I had an opportunity to do the Race Across America, and then sort of got the ultra cycling bug. It's like getting a tattoo. You got to get another one. So,
right.
For the first year I said never again. And then, COVID happened, and I said, I need a goal. So doing it this time with my husband, who was on the crew for the Race Across America. We had a team of 4 and a crew of 12. And Race Across the West, we're doing a team of 2 and a crew of 6. But it's I think it's going to be much harder because you ride for 12 hours a day instead of 6 hours a day, even though it's shorter. It's a whole different race philosophy.
How many miles are you going to be doing in that 12 hours a day of cycling? I'm just trying to get into my head from my cycling, which doesn't compete anywhere near what you're doing. But what's the mileage you're anticipating doing then?
So about 150 miles a day each.
Wow.
Yeah. So because we got to finish in three and a half days is our goal. So and then it'll be different depending where we are. So in the mountains, we'll switch off every 15-20 minutes because you just get super tired. The desert is very hot. Mountains are hard. But on the long, of course, there are not that many long flat hauls in this section of the race. Half the elevation of the country is in the first 3 days. So we'll do 50,000 feet. But we do need a couple times where we go 3 to 4 hours so someone can sleep. Because 3 days is too much not to sleep it's okay for the crew, but not for the racers.
And presumably for some of the training miles around Colorado. I mean, Will, you've got your bike. I would like to think you're there with Eleanor, right? You're the support crew on some of these long training rides.
So I would volunteer to be part of the support crew, but definitely not cycling the way Eleanor and David will be doing it. Yeah, no, that's just not in the cards for me.
So we've been doing a lot of training. We use a platform called Zwift, which is, I don't know if you know that, Tom.
It's the virtual training program.
Yeah, virtual training, you have a little avatar, but we do races and rides and competitions, and it's actually amazing training. You work harder because you're trainers and erg, and it can make you do certain amount of watt output. So the training's it's shorter inside and more intense, but your bike doesn't move, so it's hard, and you don't ever stop. You can't stop pedaling. So actually, David went outside yesterday, and he hadn't been outside in months, and it was very liberating. So soon we'll be doing, back up in the mountain here. Can't wait.
Amazing.
And when is
Sorry, go on, Will.
I'm sorry. When is the race, Eleanor?
What is it called?
No. When is it?
Okay, it's June 15th to 18th. And, I should obviously say it's a fundraiser for Water for People. So that is the reason that we're doing this craziness. I like having a goal, but this is a goal that I'll get on my bike and do it instead of saying, I'm going to not go today. I'm going to go tomorrow. No, I got to do this because I got to train. In the race across America, we raised close to $100,000. So we put that as our goal again this time. So we're going to, we've got the Cycling for Water website. It's all set up for the new race, and we're going to start a big campaign push and appeal in April. So right around the corner, it's going to be
amazing.
Well, we're open for business anytime you want to give a donation. You can do it right now through Cycling Through Water.
So we can add that link.
Yes,
sure.
The link. Yeah,
we'll make sure it's
all
on
different
the
sponsorships available. If you want your logo on our van or on our crew shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk. Tom, we're doing a business deal here, so yeah. Let's
I'll be right back.
Follow up.
We're gonna do a breakout room.
I'll be right back. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Let's add it to the channel, to the description, and try and raise awareness. That's fantastic.
Be great. Thank you.
But for sure, total respect, and take my hat off for that mileage you're doing, because a friend came who's I guess was a road cyclist and took me out 40 miles. I probably couldn't walk for a couple of days afterwards. So trying to do 3 times that distance daily for a long period of time, total respect.
Yeah, so just one more little thing on the ultra cycling. It's a weird sport because it's a lot of older people. And so as we get older, we get, theoretically wiser, but it becomes a mental game. Right. So a lot of this is just about all these mind tricks you play to keep yourself on that bike because it gets really hard. And it's interesting if you look at the profile of people who do this, they're like old like us. It's physically really hard, but it's a lot more mental. Well, it's both. Let's just say it's both. It's definitely physical.
You mean older being older than Tom, or? Yeah,
I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, just to bracket that a bit. Yeah. Tom, you're smiling.
No, we've had these conversations before, Will, about old or senior or seasoned. So I'm just aware of the communication and words we've used. But I could speak to you about this forever, Eleanor, but I mean, that's some serious mileage. So when you hit the wall, or you what are those psychological techniques then to kind of keep pushing when you know you've got to get back on the saddle the next day? Because you're right, it's a totally a mental game when you just got to keep persevering with it, right? And obviously your support crew and working with your husband really helped with that.
Yeah. So when you get back on the bike after you're off the bike, the lactic acid buildup is what's the real, like the fear. It's like the first 20 pedal strokes are like so painful. I actually scream out loud. Like it's so painful to get back moving again. And then, okay, once you get over that, that takes about, 30 seconds. And then it's like, when am I done? When am I done? When is my section? So in the Race Across America, again, we were doing 15 to 20 minutes. So I did all these things. Like first I was using my bike computer, got rid of that. And then I was using a watch, and then I was doing a backwards stopwatch. But after like 2 minutes, I'd be, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. and you start playing these games. Well, you got to do 10 more strokes. You got to count to, you got to make it to that hill. And then the thing, we have a vehicle behind us called the follow vehicle and the shuttle. Then it becomes, where are the lights of the shuttle vehicle? And they're blinking. And so you become obsessed and become a very simple humanoid. Like, all I need to do is get to those lights. And then at night, Dave was my support person. He had a strobe light on his head, so I would look for Blinky. Like, I got to get to Blinky. So it's like your total, you can't think about anything else but getting to Blinky. And then all of a sudden you're at Blinky and that's over. But then, of course, 15 minutes later, you're doing it again. But it's that simple. It's like time is in little tiny increments. And then it's like finding little things to keep you moving. But this is going to be different because we'll do those short ones, but we're going to have longer ones that are going to be, I got to have a whole new mental game to play for. If I'm going to ride for 3 or 4 hours, I'm going to give Dave a rest. I got to, Blinky won't be there with. So
Where's Blinky going? It's breaking it down, isn't it, into smaller increments, smaller kind of mind games, and just to kind of tick those boxes so that you can
like
build
those
mini achievements to get to the longer goal, right?
Yeah.
Good. Well, we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the training. It sounds, and also for the race itself. So let's talk about your kind of work then with Water for People. When was your, because you refer to it as your kind of water's your life, right? And I think we first met when you were with Arcadis as a consultant.
Yeah.
One of those things called events that we used to travel to before the pandemic. So you switched to Water for People. So tell us the kind of the transition and the kind of the backstory behind that.
Yeah, well, I'll step a couple steps further back to like, where does it all start? So my mother's philosophy, and we were 5 kids and I'm the littlest one. We lived a block from Lake St. Clair, Michigan. It's just a lake between 2 of the Great Lakes. And so we spent a lot of time like, she's like, you grew up in that lake, honey. You grew up swimming and sailing, and that's why you went into water, because you didn't have a choice. And a block also from, this is really cool, the water treatment plant. So actually, we could go. It's a small water plant, but it goes right to the lake. And then I used to go like knock on the door and check out the clarifiers. And it's very simple. Yeah. So who knows if Mom's theory is correct? But the story continues. You go through life, and I'm supposed to. My dad was an engineer. We have several in the family, and my mom was an artist. And I really wanted to be an artist. I applied to art school and engineering school. I was into photography at the time. That was my life in high school. But when I got into both, I got steered towards engineering school. You really need a career, honey, and let's start this. And you can always drop out and fall back on your hobby, but you should really try this engineering thing. And so I did that. And of course, I tried to drop out like 10 times. And I'm like, no, try one more semester. But it was all sort of miserable until I took a water class. And then at the time in college, I was like a big environmentalist, and I was taking all the science classes. I loved science. So I realized I could do, before I could figure out, I had to declare which flavor of engineering I was going to do. I could do environmental studies if I did civil engineering. So I was super motivated by the nature part of civil engineering, the water resources, groundwater, all the water, natural water. And then I studied hydraulics and hydraulic engineering in my junior year abroad in Delft in the Netherlands. So at the end of college, my senior year, I finally was so in love with my choice of degree, but it was all because of all those water classes. And then started working. My first jobs were in hydraulic modeling, physical hydraulic modeling, and bathymetric surveying, and water sampling. I lived in Seattle and sampled water from helicopters in Alaska. That was one of the coolest jobs. So and then I just keep doing water. I mean, it's changed over the years, but it's still kind of my calling, my go-to.
Amazing. So it's kind of interesting because I guess as a hydraulic engineer and working for a major engineering consultant, you're working on those kind of big engineering projects, and then kind of looking at the work you've done with Water for People, it's such a huge problem. And you've talked about the sanitation and the clean water gap, but it's kind of the community level, right? It's a decentralized rural system. So there's kind of a jump between the two. So what I love about kind of, I think what you've done with Water for People is the kind of the storytelling element of it, right? It's kind of, we always talk about these huge numbers of the billions without access to toilets, and the same with clean water. But you talk about particular people within particular families. And there was a case on your website. It was Peter from Rwanda, big family for 50 years, was used to walking to find that access to clean water. And actually that for him and the family, it was a complete game changer to the culture, the history, everything about it. But it was the way you told the story was captivating, right? Because I think often the figures of billions can just get lost. Whereas if you bring it down to the individual and the differences you're making to those lives, that really can drive change.
And Eleanor, it ties into, when we first started having the conversation, your ability to really reduce a complex issue like water to very simple, very clear narrative. This changes everything. And it does. And all the stories that you tell and all the things you do around capacity building support that. It rolls up into, yes, this does change everything.
Yeah, well, I'll credit my team for this changes everything and a lot of the storytelling, because they're absolutely world-class, top-notch. And we've changed a lot over the last, I would say, 3 years. We've redone our entire website. I don't know if you guys ever went to the old website, but it was very techie, nerdy, way too much text and way too much about the model and the stuff the engineers side of us love to talk about. We have that all, but we put it in what we call the washroom, so you can go find it. But the general site is much simpler. But just a little bit connecting sort of these themes in my life. I was really in my hydraulic engineering life. I worked on the Columbia River dams, huge infrastructure. And then I quit that job and went in the Peace Corps. I always wanted to go in the Peace Corps. Finally convinced then became my husband, my high school sweetheart, who was my boyfriend, and we went for it. We quit our jobs and we went for it, and we got to the Dominican Republic doing small scale community water projects. So something that was very different and new. And I really had a big shift in my life, just understanding first how most of the world lives poor, like you don't even know what you're gonna eat for dinner, and then becoming really accustomed to, in a sad way, death. And this is part of my TED talk, is lots of people die from just different random things, like weird sicknesses and bullets shot up in the air on a holiday, falls down and hits someone, or a machete death. So death was prevalent, but it didn't really affect me until someone I actually knew and loved in the DR died, which was Maria in my TED talk. She was the grandchild of the family we lived with, and she died of contaminated water, and I was with her just days before that, and it was like this horrible slow motion experience because it happened so fast, but yet no one could save her life. And it was just so hard for me, because it made me angry, because didn't need to happen, right? We knew people don't need to die from drinking bad water. So I really shifted in my mind, I really want to work on the water, but I really want to work on cleaning water because I want to help people. So after Peace Corps, I went into study water quality. So I went right into my master's degree into water quality and really focused on wastewater treatment and process. I did a lot of water treatment too, but wastewater is my love. Just really focused on getting clean water for people, but also that also helps the environment, but more driven by the human side of engineering. And that took me to, again, worked up to huge, working in consulting again, back to consulting, but mega infrastructure projects on the municipal side, so water, wastewater treatment plants all over the world. And I had sort of lost my way. I mean, I've been working for years in my career, and my ambition's always wanting to run a global water business, and that's kind of what you aspire to when you're an engineering consultant, and I was really interested in global issues. So I got that job, and it was great. And I realized I'm totally far away from anyone that is on any project. I'm not changing the dial for the world at all. I'm sort of moving things around and running the business, but this isn't what motivates me. It's not about being in an office. It's about really getting back to what I feel like my calling is. So I wasn't I didn't know what to do with my life because all my life I planned to work as a consultant, and I still had a long time to work. And then I saw the ad pop up for Water for People on LinkedIn. And I knew Water for People because one of the founders had been from the company I worked for a long time, which was CH2M Hill at the time and now Jacobs. And I was already in Denver. I had moved back here because I had been transferred back, and I had actually had a long-term interest getting acquainted with Water for People, because in my early engineer years, I'd been a volunteer in the Bay Area. And so I just applied for the job. I'm like, oh, that could be amazing. I'm just going to go for it. And I got the job. So a very unplanned, unengineered part of my life, just with my heart, like, I gotta go for this. And the rest of the story. Here I am, still here. It's been amazing. So that really has brought me back to that feeling of having a real, impact on really changing. This changes everything. I mean, it really does change entire communities and lives, and it gives opportunities for better health, obviously, but also opportunities for kids, especially girls, to stay in school. And education is the key to upward mobility. And then for adults, the ability to be able to generate more income for their families and not have to be spending time walking for water or taking care of sick family members. Or they actually can focus on their economic prosperity. So it is the basis, I believe, of all sustainable development and social progress. And it's been an amazing journey so far, and I'm honored to be able to lead Water for People.
Amazing. The one of the phrases is "everyone forever," right? And I think that's incredibly, on the surface, simple, but actually it's genius, and there's a lot of thought gone into that, because often the best taglines are, if you think about Nike, just do it, right? It's everyone forever, and actually maybe you can explain kind of how that ties in with the business model, because it's not just about, I think often when it comes to providing water and sanitation, people think it's just the solution or the kind of the technology that you provide, but it's not, is it? It's the most important thing is the capacity building. It's providing the skill set, educating the community, so that when the partner or the investment has gone away, that is sustainable to either fix the water system or to then pass it on to other generations. So that kind of everyone forever seems quite simple, but actually it's incredibly complex, because it ties into resilience and capacity building, you could say Water for People has shifted in the last decade, right?
Yes, and that is very much part of our DNA at Water for People and what we do. But there's a great story behind Everyone Forever. So we're 30 years old this year. And for about 20 of those years, we were very traditional water nonprofit. We worked in over 40 countries, lots of volunteers, one-off projects. And it was really about, everybody, there's such a need, let's just do what we can to help people get water. So much of that infrastructure, if not all, I don't know for sure, but it was built and then it broke, and then it's probably still broken because no one paid for their water. There were no spare parts. No one was trained to fix the pumps or the distribution system. And so before my time, so around 2009, 2010, Water for People did a reflection on what are we doing? This isn't working. This isn't, we keep redoing these projects as a sector, right? It's not just us, but this is a bizarre model that's very inefficient and not really moving the needle. So the Everyone Forever came up with Ned Breslin, the former CEO, Mayor Justice, who's the mayor of the Rulindo district in Rwanda, and other members of our global programs team. And that it became a challenge. And this is a great story because we just celebrated everyone in Rulindo. Big, huge deal for us, because 400,000 people now, that's our cornerstone of this model. They said, well, let's take the whole district and see if we can get water for everyone in the district. 400,000 people. Been to Rwanda? Either of you been to Rwanda? Very hilly.
Yeah.
So very hilly, small country, but very hilly. So there were a few, systems built, but the way it works is government said, okay, you want a district? You can have Rulindo. It's so hard. We haven't even bothered going there yet. And there's very low water coverage. So we took it on and sort of started, we had the words, but we didn't know how to do it or what that meant or how we were going to actually achieve Everyone Forever or what it meant to achieve Everyone Forever. So did a master plan, figured out the investment plan, what infrastructure was needed. And then, like you said, it wasn't just about the infrastructure, it's building the water and sanitation offices. And the people running the infrastructure, what we call the service authority, who own the assets, and for us here, service authority is Denver Water. But then the service provider is also for us Denver Water, but sometimes that's outsourced to private contractor for operation and maintenance, to make sure all that service authority, service provider can provide a level of service that's continuous, reliable. You don't have to worry about it like we don't. And then also that you have the water resources. So this has actually been added in just the last 3 years, water resources master planning, because we work in 9 countries that are all in the climate emergency, and we've lost water sources, and we have flooding, and we have droughts, and it's just continuing to get worse. So building infrastructure and then having water sources go away, like those pipes are not happy without water. That's something that we've really built in. So yeah, the Orlando challenge, we were laughed at, ridiculed. You can't do a whole district, 400,000 people, you guys are crazy. And our employees will tell you stories like they were embarrassed. Like these people came and, our CEO and the mayor said, we're going to do this, and they're crazy. And, we just want our paycheck and we want to help, do water, but like, why this crazy idea? But then of course, over the years, it started working, and then we started building like with plenty of failures. Of course, we left. Today we work in 40 districts. Some we left before we figured out that everyone part got everyone access, but then we would start to leave, and then the level of service would drop. So the forever part is actually hugely about what you said, Tom: human capacity building on the management side, operation, maintenance, rate setting, asset management. We have all tools now that we use and we transfer over to the service authority and service providers. The rate is a very important part of it because it's set based on the cost of that system. It's not a flat rate. It's not what people can pay, which is the typical way it usually goes. Well, people can only afford like 2 soles, so that's what they're going to pay this month, or 4 francs. But no, it's got to be enough to cover the service for that month and have some spare parts for repair and replacement. And then that whole education about that value of water and why it is better to pay that little extra and not have to have the system break and then walk back to the creek, which will take me 3 hours, and then I can't sell my corn fritters at the market or whatever. But that whole education piece is hugely difficult and challenging. So even in Orlando, we didn't figure out the forever piece really. We got the everyone down, we did the plan, we built it and they shall come. Well, no, they would walk by water points because a lot of people didn't want to pay. So we've really learned. Then we're now in Kichumbi, which is next to Orlando. We're about halfway through that program. We started the forever part before we started forever, working with the community, explaining why water's metered, what the value is, why it's important to pay, what goes into the cost, why it's their system, and really feeling ownership, which we didn't. It was the very end of Orlando that we started working on the forever piece. We've had operators come and go because they've been losing money. So we could talk forever on this, but it's super, of course, interesting. I love it. It's what I do, but it's also on the appearance very simple. Like everything we do, it changes everything. But when you start turning the pages, very complex and very rooted in human behavior, changing the status quo, and that, like the economic philosophy, you got to get over the hump. So the ball doesn't just roll back, right? You got to get over the hump so it stays in the new, what's the right word? The new way. And so I can't remember this word in economy, but like if you think of a statue and you knock it over, then you go back to the old way. But if you think of it as more elastic, then it bounces back. You're like, nope, if my water system breaks, I'm going to go complain. I'm going to make sure the operator fixes it because I want that water. Getting people to demand that service is really part of the success as well. So they don't want to go back to the old status quo.
You brought up something that seems almost universal, paying for water, valuing water, you then have skin in the game, and you then are more invested in it, not going back to whatever it might have been. And I think we see that almost everywhere in the world, unfortunately. Eleanor, this transformation from we're going to take whatever resources we have and we're going to sprinkle them across the globe in 40 different countries to essentially a triage of No, we're going to do it better, and we're going to focus. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's like the best strategy imaginable. It's, not just what you will do, but what you won't do and why, and gave you the ability to really have a huge impact. So how did you go from 40 to 9? I mean, what was the painful process?
Yeah. So again, before my time, but I've heard a lot about the story. It wasn't that painful, and it wasn't super strategic. It was like, where are the best government partners that we can work with? We think we have enough political will to test this model. So since we're doing government's work, especially on the water side, we need government to be in. I mean, they co-finance the infrastructure. I haven't said this, but this is really important. We do have legal agreements with each municipality, district. They finance part of the infrastructure. Always, it's different depending on the country. But which government partners are going to go in with this in this district-wide approach, everyone forever? So we divested down to 11, and then that was in 2010, and then by 2013 or so, 2 more dropped out, and we got the 9 we have today. And then we stuck with 9 till now, and actually now we're just starting our new strategy. Will start in 2022, and we call the long-term vision Destination 2030, obviously for the SDGs. And then now we're in a phase that we're looking to expand to more countries, but we want to expand to find people, water organizations working in those countries that already do a like-minded work that we can really work together and help accelerate their work. Because all our country programs we started on our own, and it takes at least 5 years to get any traction. And so we don't have time, right? 2030 is around the corner.
Right. We don't have time. Great segue.
So
go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, so do you think, from what you're saying, basically organizations where there's already kind of effort and progress underway, you can kind of help shepherd where there's been that progress, right? So do you think that there needs to be a new breed of coalition if we are to reach SDG 6 by 2030? Is that kind of what you're hinting at?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a very fractured sector, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of little things, and there's plenty of big things to do. So the more we can work together, which of course is harder than working alone, but I think there's definitely synergies and upsides that can be gained. And we're working hard right now on a partnership with a Dutch organization, IRC Wash. And so we're coming together because over the years of doing district everyone forever that I discussed, we've gotten a lot of influence and a seat at the table at the national level. So with ministries of water, we're now working on country strategies, again, SDG 6 at the country level, regulations, policies, water laws, et cetera. And that's their core strength. And they've been working down towards the district level. So coming together really makes a lot of sense for us. And we feel like we can each move faster. And they're in different countries than we are. So this is our first step at coming together in the sector. And then we want to create a structure that we can attract others that want to join us towards Destination 2030 and beyond. We won't be done with our work in 2030, but we hope to have, especially in some countries, really close to at least reaching the water goals for SDG 6.
Do you think, the SDGs have always, writing about them years ago, have always seemed so far away, but it's less than a decade now. It's not, so at least, do you find there's a kind of renewed sense of urgency now we're less than a decade? Because often we sometimes see some kind of pledges or goals for 2050, which just seems, I totally get the long-term strategy and planning, but it's just not urgent enough, is it? We need action now. The climate crisis is upon us, right? And as you've mentioned in all your previous talks, there's still billions lacking access to safe sanitation and water. And so by pledging for 2050, we're not going to create these kind of catalytic communities and galvanized new partnerships that we really need.
Will wants to say something, yeah.
Well, I spent a big chunk of my time on the corporate side, and a 2050 goal, it's like, who's going to be around?
That's true.
It goes back to skin in the game. If the goal is to hit it by next year or 2 years out, there's a pretty good chance most people will be around, and they've got to be invested in having that bias for action. But if it's 2050, it's, not going to happen.
Yeah, in my personal experience, even in doing strategies in all the organizations I worked for, but most recently Water for People, we have 5-year, we had 2017 to 2021. And by year 3, we were already changing things, right? Now, the big goals we change, and we will meet them this year. But we realized that 5 years, on one hand, was too much for us, but on the other hand, not enough, because our programs are generally 10 years. So we said, let's do a 10-year vision, but then let's break it down into 3 and 5 year short term. So that's what we're doing now. We have the 2030 vision, which still seems some days really far away, but the other days right around the corner. And then we'll have goals for 2025 for the strategy itself. But I will say, like, at the countries we work with, it's SDG 6 is all about the national government and their, buy into that commitment they signed on the SDGs, but also how they've, what their approach is to water. So what we see in the ones we believe have the most traction are the national governments that have either created a Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Water and Sanitation, whatever you want to call it, have made that a priority in the cabinet, have put money towards that, have set their own goals on how to get there. And then, we've been working in tandem with helping achieve those goals, but also knowing the investment plan required for not only the capital cost, but the life cycle costs, and then building the water and sanitation offices to keep the systems running. I mean, that's a huge cost in the life cycle, that it's not just about getting everyone access again, it's sustainable access and sustainable management. So for us, we've really we do national work in all our countries, but that big commitment for sure, Rwanda is there. We do quite a bit in Uganda and Bolivia and Peru. Those are sort of the ones we work on with the national government the most. So we either have someone seconded to the ministry or working closely with the ministry and actually helping create the documents and the plans. And then for the money side, I mean, it's about getting those plans bankable so they can go get outside financing.
Right.
Multilateral, bilateral.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something, Will.
Oh, no. I was hanging because I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to kind of reflect and say that we always, on the stream, when we think about potential guests, is we always screen for kind of people with a bias for action, right? It's kind of part of the management. I certainly think from your time at Water for People, and you've shown that bias for action, and for me as a kind of the journalist storyteller, I love how that everyone forever is not just a tagline, it runs through the entire business, right? And that forever element in terms of the capacity building and sustainable infrastructure and knowledge is really the key part of this. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're kind of at the end of we've gone over the 30 minutes. I know we could easily chat to you for hours more on this, but Will, kind of any closing comments and thoughts from you? There we go. There's the link.
Okay, now, so yeah, Eleanor, there was a book that came out a while ago, The Power of Unreasonable People. So you are an unreasonable person in that you do not accept the status quo. And so as an unreasonable person, what's the call to action? What can we do in the next 9 years or sooner in terms of ensuring that everyone has access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene?
Oh, yeah. There's so many things to do. Obviously, that's what gets me out of bed every day. But I think one is just being aware that there is a lot still undone, especially in water, right, around the world. We still have billions of people without services, and even more in sanitation. So being aware of those issues and talking about them. And then if people want to contribute either their time or their treasure, pointing towards organizations like Water for People, for example, but also just influencing. In our case, like I also spend time influencing the international affairs budget, part of the Department of State on the Hill, even though we don't, we're working maybe on getting a USAID grant right now, but it's not a big part of our funding. But it's important that I feel like my government is in on this. Like they believe the job isn't done yet. And I do believe that having sustainable development helps with national security and brings security to countries. So linking those things, I think, are critically important. As Americans, when we live in our nice bubble here, the world's a pretty unstable place, but we do have a role to play in that stability. And that does begin with basic development, which starts with water. So that is something that any American or anyone around the world who lives in a high income country can relate to. So having that awareness and using your voice to influence those policymakers and decision makers, I think, is absolutely important as well. And I guess I will say also, we're seeing a lot more interest from the private sector. So as we move forward, I think this trend in development, development assistance may be shrinking by outside governments giving to other countries, but corporate investments are growing. So really having those corporate connections is really important as we move forward. And it's coming much more of a public-private partnerships. We don't call it PPP, but we have them all over the place. We have lots of corporate partners, and we work with governments, and we're the peanut butter that brings it together and sort of connects it all. And I think corporations that have an awareness as part of their ESG or whatever they're doing in corporate social responsibility, this is a problem that's not going to go away, right? That as population increases, demands on water, a finite source, it's going to become more and more critical. And it's the precious resource we have will have multiple demands. So I think that's a growing area that we all need to become more aware of as well.
That's a nice kind of way to wrap up. I think we need more coordinated efforts all around, right? So but thanks, Eleanor, for taking the time out of your day. Really great to hear more about the grueling race you have coming up. And those miles in the saddle, I don't envy you at all, although total respect for doing it.
No, you can be a dot watcher, Tom. So the dot watchers, we carry GPS, and you can see our little dot move on the Race Across the West site. So it was pretty fun with the Race Across
Sign me
America.
up. I'd love to be. What is it? I thought you said dot walker. It's a dot watcher.
Dot watcher.
Dot watcher.
So I didn't know about this phenomenon until I did the Race Across America, but it is like, we would wake up, any time of day, and there would be all kinds of like stuff on our Facebook page or emails, or whatever. People are watching our dot, and they'd be like, "Did you pass this team? I saw it. Did you guys get a flat tire? What happened? Your dot wasn't moving." It's sort of been a thing with ultra sport. People watch dots, so you too could be a dot watcher.
We're in.
Everyone that watches the stream will hopefully be a dot watcher.
And then one more.
And a dog walker.
And a dog walker. One more thing for those watching. If you want to know more about the Relindo story, which is like the birth of Everyone Forever, we do have a mini documentary that we put out for World Water Day that we can share on the link as well, because it's a great story.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
If we get
Eleanor,
the link,
thank
we can list it in the description section. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Well, Eleanor, thanks again for your time. Been fascinating to hear from you as well. And thanks, Will, and best of luck for the race coming up and everything else moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Will. Great to spend this time with you.
Great to see you. All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.